Christmas will always be as long as we stand heart to heart and hand in hand. Dr. Seuss. Couples marry and divorce all the time. The American Psychological Association says approximately 40 to 50% of first marriages and 60 to 67% of second marriages end in divorce. This statistic would include Bruce and Sylvia Pardo. While a lot of marriages end in divorce, very few of them end in mass murder. Bruce Pardo was born on March 23, 1963, and lived in San Fernando Valley. He was a smart kid and graduated from John H. Francis Polytechnic High School. He then attended California State University and went on to secure a job at the Jet Propulsion Lab in La Cañada, Flint Ridge, California. In 2004, Bruce would meet Sylvia Ortega. Little did either of them know this would set their lives on a deadly downward slope. In public, Bruce was a respected, well-liked member of his community. However, behind closed doors, he seemed to be controlled by money and lies. This would become apparent to Sylvia very soon after the pair married in 2006. Their honeymoon period was brief, and it soon became clear that they were not compatible. Sylvia brought 3 children from 2 previous relationships with her when she married Bruce: Sal and Selena Castillo and Amanda Orza. Though Bruce was reportedly close with Amanda, the youngest of the 3, he insisted Sylvia pay for everything the children required from her own finances. He wouldn't even open a joint bank account with Sylvia, though they did have a good nest egg of savings together. Bruce's attitude toward money and his lies were likely contributing factors in the couple divorcing barely a year after they married. Bruce Pardo was drowning in debt. During divorce proceedings, Sylvia asked for her attorney fees to be paid, plus an additional $3,166 in monthly spousal support. She claimed that in just 2 months, Bruce had withdrawn $71,500 from their savings, depositing it into private accounts and leaving them with just $17,000. Bruce retained the family home, which he owned before the marriage, and had to continue paying the $2,700 monthly mortgage on his own. His monthly expenses were upwards of $8,900, and he had over $30,000 in credit card debt. Though Sylvia asked for over $3,000 in spousal support, the judge granted her $1,785 per month on top of a $10,000 lump sum. She was also allowed to keep her expensive wedding ring and the family pet. Bruce complained to a friend that his ex-wife was taking him to the cleaners. He argued against the large payment he had to give her, telling the judge she was living rent-free with her parents and was spending lavish amounts of money on a luxury car, trips to Vegas, expensive restaurants, massages, and golf lessons. Bruce already had a monthly deficit of nearly $3,000, and it would only get worse. In July 2008, Bruce was fired from his job as an electrical engineer at the ITT Corporation Electronic Systems Radar Systems for billing false hours. Bruce had never done anything criminal before this, and was likely just trying to make ends meet. This divorce wasn't the only time Bruce was made to pay out a large sum of money, however. It is suspected that another aspect of the divorce was the young, disabled son Bruce kept secret from Sylvia. Bruce hadn't seen 9-year-old Matthew in years, but was still claiming him as a dependent on his taxes. Matthew's mother, Elena Lusano, had no idea he was doing this. Bruce paid no support to Matthew and Elena, despite being responsible for his son's disability. On January 6, 2001, while alone with Bruce, Matthew fell into the backyard pool. The accident resulted in severe brain damage that now requires constant care. His medical costs were upwards of $340,000. Elena would sue Bruce for a portion of his homeowner's insurance policy, and $36,000 would be put into a trust fund for Matthew. Outside of this, Bruce never contributed any money to the boy's care. Bruce had long since reached his breaking point by the time the divorce from Sylvia was finalized in mid-December 2008. He was sick of what he perceived as greed, tired of his ex-wife taking everything from him. Bruce made plans, and on December 24th, he set them in motion. On Christmas Eve in Covina, a quiet suburb of Los Angeles, the Ortega family was hosting their yearly Christmas party. Family and friends gathered to eat, drink, and enjoy the company of those they loved. This party wouldn't spread the festive joy of previous years, however. At approximately 11:30 p.m., there came a knock at the door. 8-year-old Katrina ran to open it and was delighted to see none other than Santa Claus standing outside, holding a big gift box. The kids at the party were, understandably, excited. They started yelling, "Santa! Santa!" Santa set his box down and pulled 2 more gifts from the pockets of his red trousers. A pair of semi-automatic handguns. Santa turned on Katrina and shot her in the face. It was the first bullet of hundreds as he opened fire on the Ortega family and their guests. Chaos erupted in the home as the partygoers scrambled, panicking, trying to escape to safety. After long minutes, the shooting stopped, but there was still the big gift box to unwrap. Inside was a modified air compressor, converted to spray gasoline. It was a homemade flamethrower. Santa, real name Bruce Pardo, would use the compressors to spray fuel around the home as people lay dead and dying around him. Before he could ignite the fuel himself, however, it came into contact with an open flame. The resulting explosion started the raging inferno that would consume the home. Between the explosion and quickly rising flames, Bruce would suffer third-degree burns to his arms and legs. The heat was so intense, it would also melt parts of the Santa suit to Bruce's skin. His injuries would change the course of his night and derail the plans he had set in place. Using the chaos to his advantage, Bruce escaped the burning house, stripped off his Santa suit, and fled the scene in his rented Dodge Caliber. As the fire raged, one of the survivors managed to make it out and place a call to 911. Within minutes of that initial call, the lines were flooded as concerned neighbors phoned to report the fire. It took 80 firefighters an hour and a half to put out the 50-foot flames. Through the smoldering wreckage, the bodies became visible. The 9 victims were burned so badly, they needed to be identified with a combination of dental and medical records. Those who lost their lives that night were 43-year-old Sylvia Ortega Pardo, her parents, 70-year-old Alicia and 80-year-old Joseph Ortega, her 49-year-old brother, Charles, and his 45-year-old wife, Sherry, her second brother, 51-year-old James, and his 52-year-old wife, Teresa, their 46-year-old sister, Alicia Ortiz, and her 17-year-old son, Michael. 3 others were injured in the attack, but thankfully survived. They were 8-year-old Katrina, the little girl Bruce shot in the face, a 16-year-old girl who was shot in the back, and a 20-year-old woman who broke her ankle when she jumped from a second-story window. Those 9 individuals were not the only ones who lost their lives that night. After leaving the house, Bruce drove 30 miles to his brother's house in Sylmar. He parked his rented car a block away and stumbled to the house on his burned legs. No one was home, so Bruce let himself inside. Though he had an escape plan and more that he wanted to do that night, Bruce felt he was too injured to carry out the rest of his plans. He gave up Having taken the life of his ex-wife and part of her family, Bruce had accomplished his main goal. But he wouldn't be going to prison for his crimes. Bruce chose to turn one of his guns on himself. Alone in his brother's home, Bruce Pardo died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound early on Christmas Day. Later on, when relatives returned home, they found Bruce's body. Police were already investigating the shooting and fire by then, and everything started to come out into the open. The escape plan. When the police arrived at the home of Bruce's brother, they recovered $17,000 strapped to Bruce's legs with cling wrap and a girdle. They also found a plane ticket purchased via Air Canada and believed he would be leaving the country. However, it was later determined that the flight was actually from Los Angeles to Moline, Illinois, with a layover in Minnesota. The flight was set to depart on Christmas Day. A few days prior, Bruce had apparently made plans to visit an old high school friend who lived in Moline, and whom he had previously visited in October. It is undetermined if Bruce was actually planning on visiting the friend, or if he was going to flee the country. Either way, it seemed like Bruce had given himself a few options for escape. The evidence. Outside of the weapons and spent ammunition left behind at the Ortega house, Bruce had a trail of weapons and traps behind him. The rented Dodge Caliber was the biggest trap. Inside, police discovered the remnants of the Santa suit, which had been rigged to trigger a fire that would detonate black powder in the vehicle. They also found 200 rounds of ammunition and a pipe bomb. Police evacuated surrounding homes, and a bomb squad attempted to disarm the rigged car. Unfortunately, they were unsuccessful, and the vehicle exploded. Thankfully, no one was injured. A second rental car was discovered in Glendale near the home of Sylvia's attorney. If Bruce hadn't taken his own life, the attorney would have lost his due to his role in Bruce's so-called downfall. There were no explosives found in this vehicle, though there was a gas can, 2 computers, and a map of Mexico. The Christmas horrors continued when police searched Pardo's home in Montrose. The place was well decorated for the holiday, which was a tradition for Bruce. However, inside the Santa's grotto he set up, police discovered what they called a virtual bomb-making factory. Among the decorations was a stash of parts and components to make explosives, 5 empty boxes of semi-automatic handgun ammunition, 2 shotguns, and a tank of high-octane fuel. Bruce's friends and neighbors were shocked by the events that had occurred. Everyone claimed he was a kind and friendly man, a churchgoer, a volunteer. People genuinely liked the man. He even offered to play Santa for the children at his church, which was how he obtained the suit he wore when he committed his Christmas Eve atrocities. Despite Bruce's outward kindness, it is clear the man was broken inside. Investigators suspected the man also intended to kill his own mother, simply because she was sympathetic to the plight of his ex-wife. He wanted to get rid of everyone who ruined his life, and kept taking his money. Bruce Pardo destroyed one of the most joyous, beloved holidays for dozens of people, all because he was selfish and broken. He took lives and traumatized many more. 13 children were left without parents that night. More were left terrified by the sight of Santa Claus. No longer will their Christmases be merry and bright. As always, we here at Villains with Vaughn would like to thank you for your continued support. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and ring that bell. And of course, be sure to give us a follow on all of our social medias. Please be safe this holiday season, and we will see you in the new year.